In 1996, a fearless journalist exposed Nigeria's darkest secrets and paid the ultimate price. This is the shocking, untold story of Bagauda Kaltho, a man who dared to challenge the military regime of General Sani Abacha and paid with his life. Bagauda Kaltho was a courageous Nigerian investigative journalist whose work in the 1990s exposed the rampant corruption, human rights violations, and systemic injustices within the country. His investigative career was marked by a deep commitment to truth, even in the face of immense political pressure and government hostility. Kaltho's career was a testament to the power of the press and the responsibility of journalists to hold the powerful accountable, even when doing so meant putting their own lives at risk. Born and raised in Nigeria, Kaltho entered the world of journalism with a clear purpose: to shine a light on the dark practices of the Nigerian government. His investigations focused on the widespread financial corruption that had permeated the military regime of General Sani Abacha, who seized power in 1993. Abacha's regime was notorious for its brutality, suppression of dissent, and corruption, making Kaltho's reporting all the more dangerous. As a reporter for Newswatch, one of Nigeria's leading independent magazines, Kaltho gained a reputation for his fearless reporting on government corruption, the military's involvement in business dealings, and the political machinations that kept power in the hands of the military elite. His stories were not only well-researched but often threatened the stability of the political elite, making him a target for those who would rather keep the truth buried. But Kaltho's work went beyond simple corruption. He was uncovering the systemic abuse of power that had infected every level of Nigerian society. He was exposing a web of deceit, a vast network that kept the country in political and economic turmoil. His investigations painted a picture of a government that was willing to sacrifice its people's well-being for personal gain. His boldness in tackling such sensitive topics made him a symbol of resilience in Nigerian journalism. However, with each story he broke, the risks grew. Abacha's military regime was known for silencing those who dared to question its authority. Kaltho's reporting was becoming increasingly critical, and his investigation into military-run businesses and financial mismanagement caught the attention of the wrong people. He had become an enemy of the state. Bagauda Kaltho's investigative reporting was marked by a relentless pursuit of truth, a commitment that made him one of Nigeria's most courageous journalists of his time. Working for Newswatch, one of Nigeria's leading independent news outlets, Kaltho used his platform to expose the country's deep-rooted corruption, human rights abuses, and the military's covert involvement in the country's affairs. His stories were not just news reports. They were powerful calls to action, shedding light on the darkness that lay hidden within the corridors of power. Kaltho's journalistic approach was both thorough and fearless, as he dug into the highest echelons of Nigerian society, uncovering financial misconduct, abuses of power, and political corruption. He was particularly focused on the dealings of the military under General Sani Abacha's regime, which had seized power in 1993. The military government, notorious for its authoritarian control, brutal tactics, and repression, was not above engaging in widespread corruption. This created the perfect storm for Kaltho's investigative work to shine a light on the grim realities of military involvement in state affairs. His first major breakthrough came when he exposed the financial corruption within the military government, focusing on the embezzlement of state funds by senior military officials and their business cronies. Kaltho revealed how military leaders were siphoning off funds meant for public services and development projects, diverting them into their own private businesses. The military, which had positioned itself as the guardian of Nigeria's resources, was instead exploiting the country's wealth for its own gain. Kaltho's reporting was meticulous, breaking down complex financial transactions and linking military figures to questionable business ventures both inside and outside of Nigeria. In addition to corruption, Kaltho's investigations delved into the human rights abuses committed by the military regime. He was particularly vocal about the abuse of power against political dissidents, activists, and ordinary citizens who dared to speak out against the regime. The Nigerian military government was known for its brutality in silencing opposition, and Kaltho's work brought attention to the torture, arbitrary arrests, and murders of those caught in the crossfire of military rule. His stories of innocent civilians being imprisoned without trial or forced into exile highlighted the ruthless tactics used by the government to stifle dissent. One of his most notable investigations involved uncovering the role of the military in illegal mining operations and how the regime allowed military officers to engage in illicit trade and trafficking of natural resources. Kaltho's reports linked top military officials to illegal arms trading, human trafficking, and smuggling, showing how these operations funded not only the regime but also groups involved in political violence across Africa. His work painted a vivid picture of a military regime that had transformed into a corporate power structure, more concerned with accumulating wealth than serving the people. Kaltho's bold approach made him a target, but he never shied away from the truth. His most daring work involved investigating the government's involvement in the oil industry, particularly the misuse of funds intended for national development. Nigeria, one of Africa's largest oil producers, was plagued by a mismanagement of oil revenues. Kaltho's reports revealed how military officials were siphoning off billions of dollars in oil contracts, often to the benefit of foreign companies and corrupt middlemen. He exposed the collusion between military elites and multinational oil companies, who exploited Nigeria's resources with little regard for the environment or the well-being of the people. What made Kaltho's reporting so effective was his ability to connect the dots between seemingly unrelated issues, such as military coups, economic instability, and political repression. He had a unique gift for exposing how one act of corruption led to another and how the system itself was designed to protect those in power. His investigations were not just about revealing the facts, but about showing the bigger picture of how Nigeria's political and economic systems were being manipulated by those at the top. Despite the dangers of his work, Kaltho remained undeterred. He understood the risks of investigating powerful figures, yet he continued to dig deeper, driven by a sense of duty to expose the truth. His work wasn't just journalism, it was an act of defiance against an oppressive regime. He believed that his role as a journalist was not just to report what happened, but to force people to confront uncomfortable truths, even if it meant placing himself in harm's way. Kaltho's investigative work was far-reaching, yet deeply personal. He was a journalist who not only reported on the political corruption of Nigeria's military regime, but also lived through the consequences. The danger Kaltho faced was not a distant concept, it was part of the everyday reality for journalists in Nigeria during Abacha's regime. His stories not only shone a light on the dark truths, but also spurred others to continue fighting for a free press in the face of tyranny. However, Kaltho's determination to expose the truth came at a high cost. In 1996, just months after a series of particularly explosive investigations, Kaltho disappeared. His death became the center of a storm of controversy, with the government offering a narrative that was widely questioned and rejected by his family, colleagues, and human rights groups. In August 1998, the Nigerian police force, led by Assistant Commissioner Zachary Bayu, presented an official version of events surrounding Kaltho's death. According to this narrative, Kaltho was the unidentified person who died in a bomb blast at the Durbar Hotel in Kaduna on January 18, 1996. The police alleged that Kaltho had been involved in attempting to plant the bomb himself and suggested that his employers at Newswatch were connected to the incident. The official story painted Kaltho's death as a case of self-sabotage, where he was attempting to carry out an act of terrorism and died in the process. However, this official account has been met with overwhelming skepticism from Kaltho's family and colleagues. They rejected the police claim as spurious and callous, arguing that it was an attempt by the government to deflect blame and cover up the true cause of death. The claim that Kaltho died as a result of a failed bomb attempt is widely disputed by those who knew him best. Kaltho's widow, Mrs. Martha Kaltho, and his colleagues at Newswatch firmly rejected the police's version of events. They believed that Kaltho had been kidnapped, tortured, and ultimately murdered by state security agents in retaliation for his fearless reporting during the brutal military regime. The doubts surrounding the government's version of events are further amplified by several inconsistencies in the official account. For instance, there was a 32-month delay before the Nigerian police identified Kaltho's body, and even then, no proper identification procedures were carried out. Critics pointed to the lack of evidence to support the claim that Kaltho had been involved in any bombing plot, raising questions about the legitimacy of the police's investigation. Adding to the mystery, Kaltho's body was allegedly buried the day after the incident without proper identification, which was considered highly unusual and added to the suspicion that the military government had deliberately prevented the truth from being revealed. Despite the overwhelming public outcry, no independent investigation was launched by the Nigerian government to ascertain the true cause of Kaltho's death. His colleagues, family, and human rights groups were adamant that Kaltho had been murdered by the state apparatus. but the military government under Abacha's rule refused to pursue justice for Kaltho's family or the press community. Organizations like Journalists for Democratic Rights, along with international press freedom groups, called for a public inquiry into Kaltho's death. However, the Nigerian government showed no intention of conducting a fair investigation. His death, therefore, remained an unresolved tragedy, a stark reminder of the perils faced by journalists during Nigeria's military regime. Over the years, numerous conspiracy theories have surfaced regarding Kaltho's death. Some speculated that Kaltho had been killed by government agents in a covert operation, orchestrated by those in power to prevent him from publishing his damaging reports. Others suggested that the bomb blast story was a fabrication created by the state to obscure the true events leading to Kaltho's murder. His colleagues and family members have consistently maintained that Kaltho was targeted for his investigative work and that the Nigerian government was responsible for his untimely death. Despite the lack of official investigation, Kaltho's murder has become a symbol of the risks journalists face when they expose corruption and injustice in oppressive regimes. Although the precise manner of Bagauda Kaltho's death remains unclear, his legacy as a brave journalist lives on. His unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth continues to inspire journalists and activists across Nigeria and the world. Kaltho's life was cut short, but his work paved the way for greater awareness of the dangers faced by the press in countries ruled by authoritarian regimes. His story serves as a tragic reminder of the price of truth and the need for press freedom. Kaltho's case remains unsolved, and his death continues to haunt those who continue the fight for freedom of expression. Despite the government's attempts to silence him, his legacy remains a beacon for journalistic integrity and the sacrifice that comes with exposing corruption and fighting for a better future.